Welcome to Super Doc Stories, the place where physicians stop playing small and start building the life, brand, and impact they were born to create. I'm Dr. Marissa Caudill, physician, CEO, and co-founder of Super Doc Tech. And if you're listening right now, something in you already knows you are meant for more than a packed clinic schedule, a shrinking sense of autonomy, or a career defined by someone else's metrics. Here at SuperDoc Tech Stories, we shine a light on bold, brilliant doctors who are stepping outside the traditional box of clinical medicine. The ones using technology, AI, and automations not just to run a cash pay practice, but to build movements, reshape their identities, and reach more people than medicine ever allowed them to before. Because in this new golden age of medicine, your expertise is currency. Your voice is public health intervention. And your story, it's the spark someone else has been waiting for. On this show, Mona and I share how we and dozens of super docs just like you have used the right tools, the right strategy, and the right support to turn overwhelm into clarity, confusion into confidence, and ideas into income. We talk about the emotional cycle of change, the valley of despair, yes, you will go through it, and how the right community and technology can rocket boost you straight into that phase of informed optimism and fulfillment. So if you're a physician building a cash pay practice, if you're dreaming of coaching, consulting, speaking, or creating, if you're ready to stop exchanging time for dollars and start scaling your wisdom, you are in the right place, and we want to hear your story. If you've got something powerful in the works, apply to be featured on this show by going to superdoctech.com/podcast-booking. We want to celebrate you, amplify you, and help you shine brighter than ever. All right, SuperDoc, let's dive in. Your next chapter starts now.
Welcome back to Super Doc Stories. This is Dr. Mona Sodhi, and I'm really excited today to introduce our guest, Dr. Krista Gonzales. She is a triple board certified physician in internal medicine, obesity medicine, and endocrinology. She is a powerhouse, and she is the founder of the Pause to Thrive Retreat. She is a speaker and consultant for pharmaceuticals, as well as helping other clinicians optimize their clinical practice. So Dr. Krista, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I know I've shared a little bit about you, but please tell our listeners a little bit about who you are.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure of mine to be on. And yeah, so I'm a mom. I like to say that first and foremost of two, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, soon to be 2-year-old. And I am triple board certified. I'm kind of one of those type A people that just needed to learn more and more and more about your craft. So that's what got me into where I am today. Yeah. A little bit of guidance, well, actually a lot of guidance from a very good mentor as well. And I like to say that I thrived past burnout. I'm not going to lie, burnout was not fun, but I did have to pivot and change directions after burning out. Closely after the pandemic, like many, healthcare providers did.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me you've got this background in endocrinology and obesity medicine. What are you up to nowadays? Like, what does life look like for you?
So I am a teleendocrinologist currently, and I love that because it allows me to make my own schedule, which is key, as any mom out there knows. Flexibility is gold. Flexibility just does not beat anything else. And so I love my schedule so much, in that I can do my job, when the kids are at school or when there's childcare provided. And then also, when sometimes they're asleep or whenever it's needed occasionally. I used to work in the wee hours of the night when I was a traditional medicine clinician working 60 plus hours a week. It was 40 hours on paper, but there's charting time. And so I couldn't do it anymore. I burned out, and it was tough emotionally, from a sleep, from a health, perspective. So I went into the telemedicine, and now I'm able to have that flexibility built into my schedule. I also speak for pharma, and I love it so much because I get to educate other clinicians on products that I believe in and that work and have amazing efficacy.
So Dr. Krista, I'd love to know more about the speaking that you do and how you serve both, it sounds like, in pharmaceuticals as well as helping other physicians.
So that's the beauty of speaking. with pharma as well, is that you're able to educate other clinicians on cutting edge medications that are really, really helpful in many new ways. We as physicians are kind of slow to move, and it's hard amongst all of our other responsibilities to stay updated. So I love being able to do that for others. Education is near and dear to my heart. As physicians, we're kind of natural educators. We educate our patients all the time. And to be able to educate peers is just really, really fulfilling. So I really love it. It's very fulfilling. I love also, in addition to talking about new medications, talking about ways to optimize one's practice, particularly how it relates to obesity medicine. And that's sort of speaking for pharma or as a consultant. I also educate patients as a speaker. I speak on mother's health. So all of the transitions that we go through as women, hormonal, emotional, you name it. It's one thing to read about those things in a book, and it's another to go through them yourself.
Yeah. So before we started the podcast recording, we were talking kind of offline about how the speaking and consulting kind of just happened. So I'm sure our listeners kind of want to know, like, how do you get into something like that? And what are the key relationships they might want to think about if they want to have this awesome kind of diversity in their work that they do? So if you have any tips, I'm sure they would love to know.
I feel like just putting yourself out there just opens the door. Just reaching out to a colleague who may be doing it and having them explain how they did it, depending on the area that they're doing it in. I have colleagues that have written books, that have their own coaching practices, that one of which has been my personal mentor, some that do and do not sit on advisory boards for pharma, some that, speak for pharma. So really just kind of getting interested, putting it out there. I feel like that's the hardest step. Is putting one's desire out there, because there's always that what if I can't? What if it doesn't work out? Well, what if it does?
What if it does? Right. So I love that. So it sounds like just putting yourself out there and kind of working the connections you already have, and not in a very transactional way, but just organically talking to people about, hey, how did you start with pharma, or how did you start with speaking, and just getting to know people. And I'm sure in your experience, people do want to pay it forward. They do want to help, and they do want to help other doctors, think outside the box, diversify what they're doing. So if you don't ask, you won't find out. So I love that you just got curious, and obviously, like, you're putting yourself out there. You've got a great Instagram and all that. So I love that tip. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, how to make connections, it all starts with just putting yourself out there and finding out what other people are doing. So that's really wonderful. So it's not this. Some people think that, oh, I've got to take this course and I've got to do all these things and I've got to build this big resume. But really, sometimes it just happens right after having these relationships. So I want to know more about the Pausing to Thrive retreat. Who does that serve, and kind of how did it come to be?
It came through my own personal journey as a mom and a physician, a woman in a male-dominated field who was a high performer. I went through a bit of an identity crisis after having my first child. My husband's also a physician, as you know, talked about him before, and he's a nephrologist, and he, has a very successful practice. After we had our first child, we had been together for like 12 years, but before we were always like, oh, it's going to be 50-50 responsibility. That beautiful utopian idea. And it wasn't. It ended up being, mostly falling on me. His job was less flexible as well at the time. Mine was actually pretty inflexible at the time too, but women are creative when they're pushed into a corner and just make it work. So I did, and it was exhausting. And so I burned out after having my daughter. And apparently burnout amongst physicians is the highest in young women with young children. So we have just so many demands, the mental load, juggling all of it, the schedule. I can't even say enough, the schedule. The shoes, when, they're growing out of their shoes, diapers, wipes, like all the things that just magically appear on your doorstep. And you never have to worry about if your dad's sometimes, depending. Now, the men now in this generation are far more involved than previously, but still, it was 50-50.
Yeah, as the woman and the mother, I think that the best analogy I have is that it's like you have this browser with 1,000 tabs open at all times. And just like your browser would crash, you're likely to burn out as well. So that's a really good, it's a good way of putting it, but it's the reality of a lot of mothers and physician moms in this day and age. I also recently read something about how we're working more now as mothers than women did in like the 1980s.
Yeah, you saw that. That was interesting.
Yeah.
It was the Area CEO
Yeah.
podcast. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy that like we're in this culture that expects mothers to be even more present, but then also expects them to crush it at work. So yeah, how did that lead into your retreat?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to go to a retreat of my mentors locally for me in Miami at the time, right after I had my second child, actually. And it was a beautiful experience where I was able to pause intentionally. And I had already at that point for a couple of years had been working on myself, going to therapy, practicing pausing actively and intentionally regularly. And even with all of that work prior, another opportunity to pause, another opportunity to get away, even for a day. And for me, I was still breastfeeding, which is a whole nother journey, right? So I didn't spend the night at the retreat. I was, driving back home. But just to be able to pause away from everything for an entire day in a space was amazing. And it gave me perspective. It really, really granted me perspective to kind of step away, look at things from a different viewpoint, instead of being on that hamster wheel with literally in that survival mode, basically, where you're just looking right in front of you all the time and one step at a time, one task at a time. To be able to just pull away and, see the forest for the trees was transformative. So I wanted to gift that to other moms who were in high performing fields. Don't always get that opportunity.
I love that. Yeah, I think that we're part of this generation of women that was just raised to be tough and strong and muscle it through. But then what when you have children? But then what? Nobody really taught us then what to do. So I love that you're helping women and mothers in particular kind of pause and reflect. And I love, you said it so beautifully, like see the forest for the trees, because so many of us are just task to task to task. And we intentionally need to pause. And I love that you're doing it in a group setting, because if someone told me to do it on my own, I would just say, oh, sure, I'm going to do that, and then not really go pause. I think that power of being in a group of like-minded people and then being led to, do the certain things to kind of help you pause and really decompress, right? To just like breathe again is so important. So where do your retreats take place? Are they in Miami? Are they in different parts? Yeah,
good question. For now, they're in Miami because my kids are small. So traveling is challenging. But yes, so for now, they are currently in Miami. This coming April, we're going to be having our next retreat already. And it's going to be at a lake house, which is going to be amazing and beautiful and relaxing. In March of this year, it feels like last year, but in March of this year, I held the retreat in Miami and it sold out. It was so deeply needed in the community. And we did yoga or meditation, breath work. We did EFT tapping. And we also closed the day with a cacao ceremony. In addition to taking breaks to connect, we did foot soaks and ate, enjoyed each other's company. It was a beautiful experience.
Sounds so lovely. And I want to know more information personally, because I think that everybody should partake in something like that. I mean, it's just, we don't pause enough for ourselves. And I'm sure you've heard this, that a family vacation is really a trip. Even if you go to some beautiful place like Hawaii, you're still chasing people in diapers and all that. So I think this is really needed. Is the retreat just for women physicians, or is it open to all like working women?
That's a good question. All professions. So we had an accountant there. We had somebody in, cosmetics, a CFO of a cosmetics company. We had physicians, nurse practitioners. So it is a blend.
That's amazing. And they all get to know each other and kind of learn how they're getting through, this part of their lives. So I love that.
Yeah. Despite what we do, the journey is just so similar.
It is.
I remember talking about my own personal identity crisis, because our particular generation, like you mentioned, we were raised in the 90s, like go, the 90s go girl who can have it all and the family and do everything. And we also really gauge our self-worth off of productivity. And I feel like that is the biggest piece, that the most damaging thing that we could have learned. So I really, really love that everybody could relate, everybody could be open. It was a safe space to share. And that identity crisis is, throughout. The higher education you have, the more closely you relate your identity of who you are to what you do. And when what you do becomes kind of, de-escalate it, or perhaps you downshift it intentionally because of motherhood, then you feel a little lost in who you are.
That makes a lot of sense. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you if you have any advice for the listener that's thinking about going out on their own and doing their own thing, like you have the retreats that you're hosting and were inspired by your own burnout, your own identity crisis. What would you tell that person that's like thinking like, I've got this big idea, I want to help people because of my own personal experience? That happens to so many of us, right? What would you tell them if you could give them one piece of advice to move forward with whatever it is that they're thinking about doing? Maybe they've been thinking about it for years or decades even. Is there any piece of advice you have for them?
I would say let go. Let go of control, of the illusion of control, and ask yourself one question. And it's the only question you have to ask yourself. What if it does work out? What if it does? My mentor actually is a physician, and she, also launched her own course. It's Purpose to Practice, or From Practice to Purpose. It's 8 weeks. And one question that she asked me was, what's your ideal day if you could have it? And I told it to her. It was the first time that somebody asked me that question. And I was like, yeah, but that can't happen. And she's like, what if it can?
Right.
And now it is a reality. I work from 9 to 2. I'm able to pick up my kids. I'm not up anymore from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. What if it works out?
That's amazing. And I love that piece of advice of just let it go. Just relax. Just think, what if it does happen for you? Because if you let your mind go there, it will go there. But if you're the biggest barrier to your own success with your mindset and that ideal life. So I'm so happy for you that you've been able to achieve this, not because it's a productivity metric, but because you're able to have it seemingly balance in your life the way that you want it on your own terms. So that's beautiful. Where can our listeners find you?
Dr. Krista Gonzales on Instagram. I also have my link tree there with free information, as well as my consultation form.
And we'll include that in the show notes. Dr. Krista, thank you so much for joining us on Super Doc Stories. It's been my pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much. It was mine.
Thank you.